Good morning, my dear friends. This year's spring is absolutely completely different from the last few springs we've had. That's why in today's episode, I'd like to tell you how to take care of your lawn so that in the summer it's beautiful, lush, and just the way you want it. I believe that you haven't started working on your lawn yet because the weather in March was mediocre, especially in some regions of Poland. That's why this video will be a little bit later. I'll show you 6 steps on how to start taking care of your lawn. So stay with me until the end, because in the 6th point I'll talk about something that is the absolute future of gardens, and especially the future of lawn care. Are you ready to start working in the garden? A real solid start, because I know some of you have already begun. If so, I also encourage you to subscribe to the channel. Remember, we're about to start the WOW Garden Project, so you can send in your applications. And I'll start by telling you, first of all, if you haven't done it yet, what you need to do with your lawn. The first thing is to check the quality and condition of the lawn after winter. In my case, it looks like we have large patches, but these patches are caused by the fact that I was renovating the irrigation system, so it hasn't been reseeded yet. But let's say that's not the standard. First, we check if there's any snow mold, if there's not too much thatch somewhere, or if there are any rotten parts, because it's very important for us to identify our lawn. At this point, don't worry at all if there are any. If you prefer a lawn without weeds, you'll need to take care of them a little later. For now, we first need to identify it. It's a good idea to take something like a skewer, a pencil, or in my case here I have a garden ornament. Stick it into the lawn and see how it goes in. If it goes in easily, let's say about 10 to 15 centimeters, it means you have a pretty good soil structure. Of course, this isn't a professional measurement or test, but for home purposes it's enough. If you have trouble pushing it in with one hand, it means your soil is too compacted. There are solutions for that as well, but we'll cover those in the next steps. And another thing, check the soil temperature. You can use a regular standard thermometer, one of those probe types. It's not super professional, but it always gives you some idea. To start any work on the lawn, it would be good if the soil temperature was above 5 degrees, preferably around 8, but above 5 is enough. And another thing, don't forcefully rake the leaves if it's very wet, because then you can very quickly damage the roots, which get dug up together with those leaves. Once you know what your lawn looks like, what it needs and what it lacks, it's time to think about how to properly prepare it for the start of the season. And this is where the famous scarification comes in, which many people have already done, but I think it's a bit too early for that. Scarification and aeration are 2 treatments that really help the lawn develop. And of course, opinions are divided. Some prefer to do it in the spring, others prefer to do it in the fall. I do it in such a way that sometimes I do it in the spring, sometimes in the fall. Last year there was a thorough scarification in the spring. This year it will be in the fall. You can do it twice. What does this cause? Scarification is cutting into the lawn and removing what's called thatch and turf, which means we're giving a bit of air to the top layer of the lawn. Remember, it's best to do the scarification in a crisscross pattern, first in one direction, then in the other. Depending on the type of soil you have and the condition of your turf, how old your lawn is, you can cut a bit deeper or a bit shallower. And most importantly, absolutely do not scarify a first-year lawn. If it was established last year, it definitely doesn't need it yet. Besides, it's not yet well bonded with the soil, so I would wait at least a season and a half. So actually, you can do it in the fall, and that's scarification. However, there is also the aeration treatment, the so-called vertical or tubular aeration, which is a device with small tubes that pulls a plug out of the lawn, creating spaces there. And this has a good effect on the air in the lawn, because grass needs air and we loosen up the soil. And after we do this aeration, it would be good to cover everything with sand so that the sand gets into those holes and then it allows air to pass through. This is really good for the lawn. Just remember that after such treatments, the lawn doesn't look very nice for at least 2, 3, or even 4 weeks. That's why you might consider doing it in the fall. And what can you do to make it turn green faster and recover more quickly after these treatments? I'll tell you now. And another thing, my friends, if you've already cleaned up and made a preliminary diagnosis of what's where, then the next step is overseeding. How do you properly overseed new seeds onto your lawn? As you can see, a lot has happened here because I had the irrigation system renovated, so I'll be overseeding. I've prepared the seeds. Remember to prepare good quality seeds, not the cheapest ones, because the mixtures are very important. So that it's not just ryegrass, you need to match it to what you have. Of course, you can overseed your lawn in different ways. You can simply spread the seeds on your lawn or on the bare spots. But here's a warning, before the grass sprouts, birds often eat the seeds, so I use this method. I prepare good quality sifted soil into which I pour the seeds, of course in the right proportion, amount and so on, so I pour in the seeds, which I then mix. I mix the soil with the seeds. What does this do for me? First of all, the seeds are nicely distributed right away, that's one. Two, some of them are immediately covered. And if I use them here on the lawn, that's exactly what makes some of them end up underneath, so the birds won't eat all the seeds, some will remain. And we spread it over the areas we have for sowing. This is the classic method. However, if someone wants to have a lawn faster, you can add a bit of water to such a mixture and let the seeds pre-germinate a little. Then we can be sure that the birds won't eat those pre-germinated seeds. So, the seeds stay in such a moist mixture for 45 days. They already start to germinate, and then we spread them on the areas we want to overseed, mixing thoroughly. You can do this with some small rake or a trowel, anything really, and then you spread the mixture over the surface you want to overseed. I also loosened it up a bit here. Of course, I'll do it over the entire lawn, but here I just want to demonstrate it to you. Look, they're spread out really well, those seeds. I think I might have used a bit too much of the mixture, but if that's the case, I can just go over it again. If you have a roller, use it. If not, you can even press it down a little. By walking on it, you can mix it a little more, but if you've already done that, there's no need. And as you can see, some of the seeds are on the surface, but some are hidden. If you press it down nicely, then the grass will grow. I think the first sprouts will appear after about 7 to 10 days, provided the temperature is right, meaning above 8 degrees. My dear friends, these 3 treatments are very important and great, but actually the next 3 are the most important. The grass is very starved after winter, so it needs nourishment. That's why it's worth feeding it well after all these treatments. Potassium and phosphorus fertilizers work in different ways. One helps the green mass grow, the other supports the root system, and that's very important. Just remember, always spread the fertilizer when the blades are dry, because if you apply it when they're wet, it will stick to the blades right away and burn them. That's the first thing. And the second, use the right seeders, like rotary ones, because sowing by hand always causes a zebra effect. Especially in the spring, when the grass is starved and needs that fertilizer, a rotary or grass seeder will spread the fertilizer evenly for us. During the growing season, a lawn really needs 3 things to look beautiful. First, sunlight. Second, fertilizer. And third, water. And it's this next point, water, that is very important for the lawn. Most people in Poland water their lawns for too short a time and too often. It's important that when watering, you make sure the water reaches the proper depth, so it's better to water for a longer time but less frequently. There's a simple way to check if you're watering properly. If you have a sprinkler system for watering, just place an empty can about this tall, I don't know, maybe from some tuna, let's say a tuna can, on the lawn and water it until it fills up. That's when the lawn is properly watered. Because the water needs to soak in deeper so that the grass roots start searching for it and root themselves even more. If you do it briefly but often, the water will only stay in the top layer and the lawn will dry out quickly. And another important thing, do it preferably between 4 and 5 in the morning if you have such an irrigation system, because then the blades dry quickly. Before the sun comes up and the grass is prepared all day to absorb the water and for the soil to be properly soaked. If you water in the evening, that's 10 hours without sun, with water on the blades, and that's an invitation for fungi to your lawn. Once you've done all these treatments and the grass starts growing, and in spring it grows like crazy, now comes the final act of lawn care, which is mowing. Mowing is very important. You should usually cut no more than 1/3 of the blade, because if you cut more, you weaken the blades a bit. And remember to do it in different directions. Don't always mow in the same direction, because then there's a greater chance that this filter will appear and the grass will be laid in only one direction. And you have to do it very often, every 2 or 3 days. And if you don't have time for that, I have a solution for you, a solution that's standing right over there. As I mentioned, ideally in the spring, to mow the lawn, you need to have time every 2 or 3 days. How do you make that time? Most of the time we don't have time for that, so having a helper in the garden in the form of a robotic mower is a great solution. Right now I have a Segway Navimow robot. I208 all-wheel drive. What does that mean? All-wheel drive is an abbreviation used in cars, meaning all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, which it has. This makes the robot move excellently on almost any terrain, whether it's wetter or more sloped, on all kinds of inclines and hills. It handles really well precisely because it has this all-wheel drive system. The all-wheel drive system is not the only system that supports the operation of this robot. First and foremost, and most importantly for me, is that I don't have to lay any boundary wires. To mow with this robot, all you need to do is take your phone with the app and either trust it and click automatic mapping, or walk around with the robot like in a computer game. What's more, well, for a fan, for someone who maps the area using systems that help us with mapping. This robot will very precisely determine the area it needs to mow. Mowing robots are also characterized by the fact that they can even mow on Sundays. A quiet 56 decibels is really not much, so it can operate without disturbing the neighbors while they relax. Of course, you can adjust the cutting height of the lawn. I remind you that it's better to leave it a bit higher and mow more often, but here we have 6 cutting heights that you can change easily by turning the knob. Segway Navimow robots are equipped with the vision fence system, which recognizes objects and either avoids them or takes a different path. So anything that remains on the lawn or appears after it has been mapped will be avoided. The app used to control this robot allows us, for example, to set a mowing schedule so it can be every day, every other day, or every third day. This means that the robot actually cuts very few blades of grass, scatters them on the lawn, and this serves as additional fertilizer for our lawn. I have a question for you. Are you on team mowing robots and either have one or want to have one in your garden? Or do you prefer traditional mowing and spending 2 or 3 hours mowing very often in your free time? It's worth noting that Navimow robots can be adapted to different lawn sizes, both up to 800 square meters and larger. If you have a larger area of grass, you can choose another model from Segway Navimow. And my dear friends, I have great news for you. Until April 11th, Segway Navimow has prepared a great promotion. 100 euros off and a garage for this robot included in the price. So click the link in the description of this video and see which robots you can get. Because April is actually a great time to get yourself one. Some equipment for the garden. The app sent me a notification that my mowing robot has just finished the task I assigned it for the day, and indeed it returned to its base. And now I have to finish working in the garden because due to this prolonged winter there are still a lot of things to do, so later I'll have to remap the area that needs to be mowed. But that's actually a piece of cake because it's really enjoyable to do it in the app. Let me know how things are going in your garden. If you stayed until the end, write garden in the comments. I'll know that you watched the whole episode.